standing to return to a moral and biblically based culture.
This is the American Family Association at AFA Today.
And we welcome you to the New York studios of AFA Today. It's Kevin McCullough, always checking the news at the middle of the day to help you stay informed of what's going on, but also to do what we attempt to do every day, and that is to obliterate confusion, amplify truth, and to pursue clarity together. And it's going to be a special hour. I hope you'll be with us for the full amount, because a fellow AFR comrade is joining me in studio today, and his name is Steve Deace. He is heard on some of the stations that are listening to this broadcast now, and every weeknight, I believe, within an hour or two of my broadcast airing, the Kevin McCullough Show, Steve Deace and the Steve Deace Show is also here. Steve, welcome to the studios of AFA Today. Glad to have you.
Appreciate it, Kevin. Thank you very much.
It would help if I would also turn on your microphone from time to time.
I can try to shout if you want. Thanks for having me, brother. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too. What brings you to New York? Because you're a Des Moines boy. Everybody knows you're corn-fed and proud in the Midwest. What is the occasion that brings you to the city?
Well, apparently there's a need for a drive time host here on the Salem Talk Radio network in the conservative station here in New York City, AM 970. And they went through the entire Rolodex, got really to the honorable mentions, the agate section of the Rolodex, and they said, "Hey, let's call Deace up and see what he can do for a week."
Yeah,
so that's why I'm here.
That's not true at all. But yes, it's fun to have you in the same city. We've done a little traveling together recently. We'll be telling our listeners about that in the days to come. But we have a very similar passion, though we kind of come at what we do in talk radio from completely different kind of ends of the universes. What's been the oddest thing for you to experience in the nation's largest city? This is your how many visits here? Third visit to New York.
It's my third visit.
And you're feeling being here this long?
You know, I want everybody, if you live in New York or if you've been to New York, if you're concerned, if you're a member of Chase Manhattan Bank, I want you to know I can verify for you that the building is safe and secure. Because the other night I had a European vacation moment. Look, kids, Parliament. I walked around that building, and my Siri on my iPhone helped me figure out when I did the math, for about 2 miles. Circling this building like
just
Moses.
Going round and round the same
like Moses
building.
And the Israelites circling the mountain. And it felt like 40 years, especially when I found out that my hotel I'm staying at is right in the middle of where I'm circling, and it was 5 minutes away the entire time. So that's sort of the quintessential New York experience. I will tell you, everybody here, it's a lot like your first day of college every day. A bunch of people you don't know who pay no attention to you are all in a hurry, and they don't know why. You know, and,
that's funny.
And you've got to find addresses on ornate buildings that were all built at about the exact same time period. And so but once you get the hang of it, then you're like, it's really not that difficult.
Yeah.
It's just daunting. There's so much of everything.
Especially anything north of Lower Manhattan, which is where we're at. When we come to you with AFA Today, I tell you all the time, we're in the shadow of the World Trade Center Freedom Tower. We're right next door to Trinity Church, where some of our founding fathers are buried, including Alexander Hamilton. And we're literally a block and a half from the Bull. That's in the middle of the street, down by the corner of Wall Street. So kind of a historic place. If you go just another half block past there, you're in the harbor, and you can see the Statue of Liberty from where we sit. In fact, I think if you go back to one of the offices, you can see the Statue of Liberty straight down the street. But anyway, it's an interesting place, and as I always say, if you're ever coming to New York and you listen to AFA Today, let us know. We've got new studios here. We're gonna have a fun time letting you come in and sit. And today we're gonna not just let our guests sit, but we're gonna put him to work. Steve Deace, the provocateur of Iowa politics in some ways. But Des Moines is a little different than New York. No less significant, though, in the presidential cycle. A lot of people don't understand this. Why should a nation drive its electoral process through the center of corn country?
Iowa is a very unique place where there's just enough people to get a good representative sample, about 3.5 million people. But there's not a major media market there. There's really the closest is where I live, Des Moines,
right.
And I think that's the 76th largest radio market. So when presidential candidates come in, it's not a place where they can look at New Hampshire, which is a much smaller state, actually.
Yeah.
But it's really close to the Boston market. In fact, it is the Boston TV market. So a candidate can come in there running for the highest office in the land and do a little retail politicking, but also blitzkrieg the Boston TV market with $10 million in ads and probably buy the New Hampshire primary. You cannot do that in Iowa. You have to do retail politics. You have to roll up your sleeves. Iowans of all political persuasions take their role in the process as first in the nation. They take it very seriously. And so if a candidate will not get out there and engage them, will not show up at coffee shops, will not show up at churches, they just ignore them. And it's not because they view them as we view ourselves better than other people. In fact, if anything, Iowans, I think, maybe need to be a little bit more confrontational. We're way too humble and way too nice to the point sometimes I think we get taken advantage of. But if it's really about, will you bring yourself down to our level so we get to size you up, so we get to see what you're really like as a human being? And sincerity, a lot of people think surprising results out of Iowa, whether it's Obama winning the caucuses there in 08, and if he doesn't do that, he doesn't win the presidency, or Pat Robertson or Alan Keyes or Mike Huckabee or Rick Santorum pulling upsets on the right. A lot of it, people think it's because, well, the liberal activists in Iowa are very liberal, and that's true. And the Republican activists in Iowa, a lot of them are evangelicals, and that's true, but it's not just that simple. It really is about sincerity. Meaning, what kind of human being are you? Do you view yourself as above us? And the reason Obama won Iowa is because he engaged people, and Hillary Clinton thought that she would just come in, buy a couple of labor union bosses, and buy the caucuses. He outworked her among the people. And it's the same reason guys like Rick Santorum and Mike Huckabee have beat Mitt Romney in the last couple of caucuses. Yeah. They did the exact same thing. And so Iowans really value sincerity. And I'll tell you, the amount of political influence you can have living there is why I've stayed there. If Salem would have called and said, "Hey, our Houston affiliate needs a drive time guy," I would not have gone down there and auditioned for that because I have a nice living. It's not really about money to me. But the reason I would consider coming to a place like New York City is really the same reason you're here, and
it's the mission field that is barren and bankrupt.
It is. It's the ultimate mission field. I was walking the streets here last night and trying to make eye contact with people and doing some people watching, and how many people just have earbuds, and they're around all these historical, right here by St. Peter's Cathedral and Trinity Church, and all of these homages to the institution that gave birth to liberty on this continent, the church. Yeah. And you can see the spider webs in the windows, man, and they're just non-entities. And there's all these within a 3-mile or 3-block radius of where we're at today, Kevin. Tons of decisions are being made right now over on Wall Street that impact whole cultures, whole civilizations, whole cities, whole families. And you know what is just vacant from this entire community, just about, except for a few pockets, like a Tim Keller, whose church is here in the heart of the city. And you can say the same thing about Washington, D.C., and you can say the same thing about Los Angeles. And that is the word of truth. The word of God is vacant. Yeah. So to me, it's not about coming to a big market for me. It's about coming to a big market that needs to hear truth, and where a lot of decisions are made that influence people's lives all over the world. And
I want to be quick to point out, for those of you that listen and are big fans of the Steve Deace show, the national show, even if Mr. Deace was to consider and to jump on with us in the afternoons in the local market here in New York, the Steve Deace show is going to keep on going forward because there's a work to be done there nationally that's really important. So I want to make sure people don't get too afraid of that. Well, there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about today, Steve, and I figured you and I could just kick this stuff around. But if people want to talk to us, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I want to start with the thing I just Facebooked right before we went on the air, and that is we have the new numbers for the Planned Parenthood stats for what happened in the last fiscal calendar year. And it turns out that in America, we paid $1,653 to Planned Parenthood as taxpayers for every abortion that they performed in 2013. Now, there's some people that are just listening and their head just exploded and they said, "What? I paid for what?" Yeah, and you didn't pay cheaply either. I mean, this is pretty pricey, but $1,653 per child that was killed through Planned Parenthood is what we, the taxpayers, paid to Planned Parenthood last year. The grand total, 327,166 abortions that Planned Parenthood eliminated. Is there a town in Iowa that is about 330,000 people?
You're about 150,000 people fewer than Des Moines.
Okay, then picture just that much of Des Moines gone. That's how many people that our taxpayer dollars assisted Planned Parenthood to kill last year. The grand money total that they earned from the taxpayer, $540,600,000. $540,600,000. 540 6, and then 5 more zeros. That's how much we, the taxpayers, put into the pockets of Planned Parenthood. This debate comes around regularly, Steve, but there's no one on Capitol Hill that I can tell that ever takes it seriously. Why are we spending tax dollar money to support an organization that is killing towns, whole populations of towns?
Especially when you consider this is almost an 80% issue. I think the lowest polling I've seen on this in the last couple of years was like 73%, where people say, hey, maybe it's not my place to tell you what to do with your moral decisions, but I certainly don't want you sending me the bill for it. I think this is, if you want to end something like this, I think this is, Kevin, where we have got to, we're having a through the looking glass moment, and we're seeing through a mirror darkly here.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to flip our perspective and do a 180. Because it would be very easy to come on here and point out that we have the most pro-child killing president we have ever had, and that is true. His signature legislation,
and he brags about it.
That's right. He wears it like a badge of honor. His signature legislation, the one that bears his name, is the chief exporter of child killing in the entire history of American legislation. All of that is true. When he was in the Illinois legislature,
well, and hold, I was about to say right there, when I was doing local talk in Chicago, his journey through the Illinois legislature that the press completely covered up in both of his elections. He also was not only passively supportive on this end to the positive, he was aggressively negative in the abortion issue, going so far as to say, voting 4 times from his seat in the Illinois Senate to extend the procedure and keep it legal for a not partial birth abortion, born alive abortion. The baby is out of the woman's body. It's crying for life, and it's saying, please give me some sort of food or sustenance.
Put it down anyway.
And he said, no, go let it die in the soiled utility closet.
And even Bill Clinton, who I think I can make a case, his second term was maybe the most conservative presidential term we've had since Coolidge was president. The one liberal constituency group he never betrayed. He betrayed the gay lobby. He betrayed the civil rights. He betrayed the race pimps. He betrayed them all, except one group he never sold out, the child killers. Never sold them out. But I think we've got to do a 180 on this, because when you talk about funding, if we want to say that we want to get back to the Constitution, then it applies evenly to everybody. We can't just pull that thing out and smack Democrats over the heads with it when it suits us, and then when the Republicans don't come through, say, oh, well, I guess if we had 3 more Republicans, they'd get it right this time.
Right.
The truth is, since January of 2011, the Republicans have controlled the chamber that the U.S. Constitution says all appropriations begin in, and that is the House. And what does that mean? It means they're not allowed to spend a red cent of your money without the House's approval. So when you see John Boehner say, well, we're just 1/2 of 1/3 of the government, that's not true. He's the majority of the most powerful appropriations mechanism in the United States government, the House of Representatives. When we had a debt ceiling fight the summer of 2011, the Republicans tried to take all this funding out. And the Democrats and Joe Biden specifically said, Vice President Biden, we will shut down the government over funding of Planned Parenthood. And the Republicans blinked, and the Republicans backed down. So the truth of the matter is, until you put people in power in the opposition party, you don't have an opposition power. People in power that have convictions, you don't have an opposition party. And right now, what it really comes down to is Democrats have hills the Democrats that are in charge of their party have hills, Kevin, they're willing to die on. The Republicans in charge of the Republican Party right now have really no hills they're willing to die on, other than I just don't want David Gregory to say mean things about me on Meet the Press. That's their only hill to die on. And until that changes, guys like you and I can rail about this funding all we want. We're going to keep cutting the check because the guys we put in charge to represent us just don't have the same courage of conviction that the left has.
All right, 2 of the voices you hear on some of these stations in the evenings on AFR Talk, Kevin McCullough and Steve Deace, together in New York City in the studios of AFA today, where Steve is here for a short visit, and we're honored to have him. We're going to talk about this and take your reaction. How does that strike you? $500 million that you paid to Planned Parenthood last year? We'll take your calls. 888-589-8840. I'm Kevin McCullough, coming right back on AFR Talk.